What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Streckbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/, All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they had a jam-packed weekend full of headlines, and while some of them were awesome, some of them were a bit questionable, and they left us with even more questions as we head into week one of the regular season. Football, I mean, we've said it a number of times. Football is finally back, but football's back, my friend. This is week one. In 6 days, the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Atlanta. They will take on the Falcons. It's here. Everything counts, and all the worries, all the speculation, all the battles that we've had going on, and while they're not all settled yet, most of them are done, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are ready to roll into 2024, and we'll see what happens. It's a good one. I'm not in the Berg today. I'm back in Jessup, Pennsylvania. I'm leaving after this show, or I guess later this afternoon, to get back to Pittsburgh, but I figured I'd get up here one last time before chaos starts. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling really good. It was an eventful weekend. I mean, you look at the first full weekend of college football, which was great. I mean, closed and headlined by last night's game between USC and LSU. And if you're looking for future quarterbacks for the Steelers, I mean, that kid down at LSU, Garrett, I'm going to mess his name up. So I'm just going to say the LSU quarterback looks really good. And that was just one game. And I understand they lost that game, but he looked really good. Between that, got out and played some golf on the weekend for the last time before football season started, and introduced my wife to Happy Gilmore, and she loved it.
Hey.
So I think it was a successful weekend.
Nice. Did that spark up because you were watching the Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce, and Adam Sandler podcast episode?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I agree. I wanted to do the same thing. I spent my weekend in the woods. It was nice. Do a little camping. You know what I mean? Settle down before the chaos starts. It's always good. I hope everybody's enjoying their Labor Day, and I hope everybody enjoyed one last peaceful weekend of college football before we get into the NFL. Let's dive into everything that happened this weekend, because it was a jam-packed one. It was should have been calm. At first, there was nothing, and then boom, everything started flying. I know we got plenty of news and notes. What do you got for us?
Yeah, let's start with what we saw at Acrisure Stadium. Former Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Kenny Pickett in attendance, and actually gets acknowledged at Acrisure Stadium because, of course, he was Pitt's quarterback, then he was the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, and the question was, which was going to outweigh the other, his success at Pitt or his failures at the Steelers? Well, the failures at the Steelers outweighed the other for the fans, and they booed him. What were your thoughts on Kenny Pickett getting booed at Acrisure Stadium?
Yeah, I was talking to Dom Campbell, our Pitt beat writer, the other day or yesterday, and I was like, yo, is it loud? And he said he couldn't hear him in the press box, but nobody has denied that there were boos. So I'm glad that it was subtle. I'm glad that it wasn't crazy. I'll say this. Steelers fans could boo old players all they want, and I'm sure there were a lot of Steelers fans there who are also Pitt fans. But Kenny Pickett did do a lot of good things at Pitt. I mean, you got to think, like, if college football was the way it was today when Kenny was there, Pitt would have been a playoff team. And that's massive for the Pitt Panthers. Massive, especially for how far they have sunk since then. I mean, people at times need to take a moment and remember how special Ben Roethlisberger was and how grateful Steelers fans should be to have had him, because they have seen what has come since then. I think the same holds true for Kenny Pickett and the Pitt Panthers. So I'm not into Pitt fans booing Kenny Pickett. That being said, if you were a Steelers fan in attendance and you were like, yeah, screw this, man, I'm booing him. I get that. I understand what's going on there. I understand the fandom side of it. I'm not going to say I'm in agreement, but, well, it happened. And if I had to guess, it's going to happen a number of times this season until, Pitt hopefully Pitt does well and we could continue to fill the stands there. If Pitt doesn't do well, I think the boos will fade as the attendance fades.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation, because it is a rare instance in which almost the entire college fan base transfers over to the professional fan base in the same city. So again, what outweighs the other? And for those guys, obviously the way that Kenny Pickett left and the fact that that was what was most recent, I think that's what outweighed it. I'm not going to say I was against it. I wouldn't have done it, but I don't have any issues with those that did. They voiced their opinion. And honestly, I feel like, if Kenny Pickett and the Eagles come into Pittsburgh again, you're going to get the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot louder. I will say, before we jump to something else, it's got to stink because college guys are NFL players who, once they leave a city, if they leave on rough terms, they are disliked in that city forever. But they always have their college to escape to be a hero there. And Kenny better look at, man, he better become a hero in Philadelphia because he's one of the places to go to where people are fans. So hopefully it doesn't continue. But again, like I said, like you said, I'm not against it.
Let's move over and talk a little bit about, well, a Watt coming to the city of Pittsburgh. And no, it's not the return of Derek Watt out of retirement. Turns out all-pro defensive linebacker and former defensive player of the year, TJ Watt, announces on social media that he and his wife, Danny, are expecting their first child in February of 2025. Is it going to be a Super Bowl baby is the question.
It could be a big month in February for TJ Watt. And that was my first thought was, I think he might have timed this perfectly to say, yeah, screw it, man. I'm trying to win a Super Bowl and have a baby in the same month. That'd be pretty legendary. I think the bigger thing, I'm glad it kind of gave me a smile that you went Derek Watt over JJ Watt coming out of retirement to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was a good choice. I think that this is huge news. Obviously, congratulations to TJ and Danny. I'm very excited for them. I mean, if you had to ask me, I bet you Mike Tomlin's already got baby Watt written down on the 2047 NFL draft ticket. So, they know what's going on. But shout out to TJ, shout out to Danny. Super happy for them.
Yeah, the perfect news to get heading into the beginning of a season. It's going to lift the spirits of the entire room, especially, some of those defensive guys that have been around the Steelers for a while, some Cam Hayward, some Minkah Fitzpatrick. Good news like this helps get the spirits high going into a big week.
Yeah, and it's always, you know what they say, the best recovery after a long season, taking care of a newborn baby. They say that's as peaceful as it gets. So shout out to TJ. I'm sure it'll be a nice offseason.
Let's finish things off with the final piece of news and notes. According to Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Jerry Dulac, the Steelers were considering moving first-round rookie Troy Fautanu from right tackle to left tackle if Isaac Seumalo was to miss the entire season. Now, we know that Seumalo did not require surgery, so he might come back. Here's the quote from Dulac in the Post-Gazette. Quote, if Seumalo's injury required surgery and caused him to miss the entire season, it's likely the Steelers would have moved Fautanu to guard, but in the short term, they do not have plans to do that. So, in my opinion, and I'm sure you'll give yours, Steelers dodging a bullet in multiple fronts there.
Yeah, I mean, at what point do you learn your lesson? How long do we have to do this? How long do we have to play this game before the Pittsburgh Steelers just realize, all right, it's probably a bad idea? I mean, Kevin Dotson went out and got a bag in Los Angeles because he played his natural position. Kendrick Green made something of an NFL career last season because, well, he went out and changed positions. And you're looking at Broderick Jones right now because the Pittsburgh Steelers are trying to make the most of this situation, but they refuse to put him at left tackle. And now everybody's worried that they're going to waste him away and be another one. And they're going to do the same with Troy Fautanu. I mean, how long do we have to ride this roller coaster? How many mistakes have to be made before anybody could realize, let's stop doing this? It's a bad idea. Offensive linemen have a position. It's very difficult to learn another one. And yes, it might be a better fill, but at some point you are hurting the future. And I get it. The Steelers are hunting for a Super Bowl now. In a lot of ways, they don't care about the future. In a lot of ways, they should care about the future of these guys because your offensive linemen are like, I get it. A wide receiver is only here for a couple of years. A running back's only here for a couple of years. But offensive linemen could be here for a decade, and they could be your guy for a decade. So it's not like you go out and you waste these guys away and say, oh, screw it, in 5 years, we'll find another one. No, you want these guys to be around forever. Troy Fautanu should never play anything but right tackle in the city of Pittsburgh, ever. And if the Steelers continue to do this, they're going to find themselves in trouble. This is becoming a major flaw of Mike Tomlin's. Just to, toss some criticism his way. You could talk about him being stubborn. You could talk his inability to realize that moving guys on the offensive line is a bad idea is starting to become a major coaching issue. And I'm glad that he didn't do it with Troy. I think that would have screwed up Troy. But especially if, what if he went in there and struggled? Like, that's the last thing you want if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, is for your fan base to look at this and believe that, oh, Troy Fautanu not a guy. He stinks. You know, he's early and you lose the fan base on him. You don't want that. You're risking it with Broderick right now. Don't risk it with Troy. It's a bad idea. The Pittsburgh Steelers need to learn from their mistakes at some point and hopefully never do this again.
Yeah, flexibility is great, especially on the offensive line, but forced flexibility causes exactly what you mentioned there with Kendrick Green and with Kevin Dotson. And here's the thing, the last 2 years, first round picks, Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu. Those are pieces that you picked in a position to, as you mentioned, be staples of that offensive line. I'm not sure why you would be open to moving that around and potentially ruining a pick that was that high of value.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? And you have options. Like, that's the other part of this is, I get it. You don't want to maybe start a second round, 7th round pick, but you played him as the starter all throughout the preseason. Like, you're prepared for these moments. Why do you have depth guys if you're going to move people from natural positions into unnatural positions because you don't trust your depth guys? It doesn't make any sense to me. I get it. They've been hit with injuries, and Nate Herbig probably would have been that guy. It's Spencer Anderson time, and for 4 weeks we'll see what happens. But stop messing with the tackles, man. It just doesn't work out well.
That's a wrap on the news and notes. We have more, obviously, but first, let's have a word from our sponsors over at DraftKings.
What's up, guys? It's football season, and we've teamed up with DraftKings. Right now, new customers who bet $5 will receive $250 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, you'll receive 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. It's hard to think of a better way to celebrate fall weather, your favorite jersey, and Sunday touchdowns than with the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings app and use our promo code ALLSteelers. That's $250 in bonus bets instantly and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium after betting just $5. Stay in the action and use your $250 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You could still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code ALLSteelers and bet just $5 on any wager and get $250 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ALLSteelers only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You want to know what I'm most excited for this weekend? And I just got the tingles watching that.
Yeah, I was about to say, now I know, after, thinking for a second, I know exactly what you're most excited for.
I'm excited to lose some money, my friend. I'm excited to lose some money with our boys DraftKings, and I will be placing some bets. I held off this weekend. So I went camping. It was my buddy's birthday today. So a couple of us went up to his parents' camper for the weekend. Figured last week before football, awesome, sounds good. They all made fun of me because I was sitting there on the lake while fishing, also typing on my laptop. And, they weren't a fan of that one. Did catch fish, though. So I'm just saying, still good. And didn't bet. Told myself I'm not betting college football all weekend because I'm going to save it for next week. And I almost forgot. That next week we are going to lose a lot of money. Shout out to everybody in the press box because they all watched my reaction during the preseason when I logged into my account and realized I still had money in there from last season. So that's a win. You want to talk about, like, you know what I mean? Like, no free shout outs are just like a slept on win. Logging on to your DraftKings account and realizing, oh my gosh, I got $25 in there. That's crazy. And then losing it instantly. All right, let's dive into a big week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Week 1, Atlanta Falcons. Every headline imaginable is going to come. Russell Wilson's start in Pittsburgh. Can he revive his career? Is this the Hall of Fame progress that we've seen? Broderick Jones in the offensive line. So many questions right now. Arthur Smith's return to Atlanta that I think is kind of getting downplayed, and people are somewhat ignoring it. And I get it. It's an offensive coordinator. Nobody really cares about the offensive coordinator, but still pretty big. And he was pretty disrespected in Atlanta by the end of that. Like, so much so that everybody thought he sucked as an NFL coach in general. And I think that he doesn't suck, and he's very good at being an offensive play caller. He just wasn't the greatest head coach. On top of that, his quarterback doesn't even have a job right now, so we should address that. You want to talk about, is Arthur Smith the problem? The guy who started at quarterback for him in Atlanta isn't on a team right now. So that makes a lot of sense. Massive week, and we haven't even gotten to practice. And there are so many questions that come with that. Obviously, there's the offensive line competition between Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick. We're going to dive into that. Possible additions, because I don't believe the Steelers roster is set in place just yet. And maybe they make an addition, whether it's a trade or a signing before Sunday. And then the big one, contract extensions, because from what I'm hearing, and nothing is set in stone, there's going to be at least one that comes before Sunday, and I guess that's where we'll start. If it was up to me to guess, and just this is just what I'm hearing, and nothing's certain. Everything that I'm hearing is there's a possibility. There's a good possibility. So I'm not reporting that this is happening. I'm just guessing that it's going to. Pat Fryermuth's going to get into a deal before Sunday's game, and probably before they take off on Saturday. And in my eyes, that's the perfect situation for the Steelers. Go into the season with your tight end under a new deal, get him all juiced up, ready to go. And then on top of that, when he starts balling out this season, and you're looking at him going, Pat Fryermuth's a monster, this is a top 10 tight end in the NFL, you don't have to worry about next season paying him even more money. So it works out very well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the one I expect to happen. I think they might break the rule for Cam. They have the rule, we don't negotiate during the season. I think they might break that for Cam Hayward. I think that he'll go into the year without an extension, and they'll continue to just slowly chip away at it and try to get something done before maybe the midway point of the 2024 season. And I expect it way before that if it does happen, but I think that might be the new deadline just for Cam. And that breaks every rule in the Steelers book. That is law one in Steelers franchise organization, whatever you want to say about it. That is where it ends. Week 1, Saturday, you get on the bus. Omar puts all the contract talk in a drawer, and he shuts that drawer until February. And I think they're going to break that for Cam. I expect a contract extension to get done with Cam at some point, but I don't expect it to be before Sunday. Pat, I expect it to get done. I think he's going to ink anywhere from 12 to 14 million bucks. Maybe they get him cheap for 11, but I think 12 to 14 million dollars is the ballpark. I'm kind of shocked it didn't happen yet, but I'm equally excited that it's going to happen before week 1 because, I've been saying this all offseason. You sign that guy now because he's going to be worth a lot more money next season because he's going to have a year. And I have almost no expectation that he struggles in 2024. He seems pretty locked in. And on top of that, go look at a picture of Pat Fryermuth as a rookie and go look at him now. He's starting to look like a tight end. You look at tight ends, they are old men. They are rugged. They have been beat up. Years have been taken off these guys' lives. Pat Fryermuth's getting there. You know what I mean? You look at, he's 45-year-old man right now, chilling at the tight end position. So he's making, I think he's going to make some money. I think he's going to get a deal done. That's my first expectation is Pat gets inked before Sunday.
That one kind of tracks because I've been working for you full time now for a little over a year. One of the first episodes that I was with you, we were talking about a Pat Fryermuth extension before last season and the odds that they would sign him a year early. Now, of course, that was a little bit cart before the horse. Now it seems like, especially with Arthur Smith as your offensive coordinator, it just makes all the sense in the world to go out there and solidify that receiving tight end that's going to be able to be a big part of your offense. The Cam Hayward one surprises me a little bit. Because obviously you mentioned that's not the way the Steelers have ever operated, is signing guys to extensions, negotiating contracts mid-season. But if it was going to be for anybody, it makes sense that it would be for Cam Hayward because the fact that they're even in these extension talks at this stage is uncommon for the Steelers. Typically, they'd say, listen, you have a year left on your contract. You're a veteran. We're going to let you play this out, and then we'll decide things. Cam Hayward didn't want that to happen because, as we've mentioned, through this entire saga, he doesn't want to be Hines Ward. He doesn't want to be Troy Polamalu. He watched what happened to both of those guys when they waited out their last year of their contract, and the Steelers saying, all right, well, we don't want to renew it. You can either retire as Steeler, which they knew was very important to those players, or you can go play somewhere else, but we're not going to sign you to a new contract. Cam saw that. He's been trying to get a deal done earlier, trying not to repeat history in his sense. So that's already out of the ordinary for the Steelers. So if they're going to break their rule, it makes sense that it would be for Cam, who's already putting them in kind of uneven ground with this kind of contract negotiation.
Yeah. And it just, I think for both sides, like it's just such a weird situation because it
Yeah,
just makes too much sense for both sides. You know, for the Steelers, you get an all pro level defensive tackle who, yeah, I get it. He's 35 years old. Like at some point, Father Time is about to step through Cam Hayward's door and say, "What's up, pal? You're not playing football anymore." That has not happened yet, and it doesn't look like it's happening right now. So you give him that contract extension for cheap. You work it out so that the back end of it, if he stinks in 2024, you don't have to worry about it. If he stinks in 2025, you don't have to worry about it. At the same time, Cam just wants 3 more years, and if he's looking for a boatload of money, I mean, he's crazy, because that's just not going to happen. So it just makes too much sense for Cam to say, "I want to retire a Steeler. Give me 3 years. I've made my money." You know, and I mean, 10-12 million dollars a year is still money. You know, it's not like you're walking around playing for a vet minimum. That's a pretty good contract. And the Steelers on their end to just say, yeah, we'll get an all pro level defensive tackle for cheap, because for one, we don't have a backup option. There is
yeah,
no backup option right now. The Steelers do not have a succession plan in place. And two, Larry Ogunjobi and everybody's leaving. Like, you want that guy there. You want, unless they re-sign Larry, which I think is a possibility, but keeping a veteran that has been here forever on that defense, I mean, it's too critical. You know, it just doesn't make any sense to not run Cam into the ground if you're the Steelers, especially if you're going to get him for 10, 12, $13 million a season. Like, it's not a bad move. All right, next biggest topic I think that comes with the Steelers is obviously the offensive line competition. Spencer Anderson, Mason McCormick, they're going to duke it out all week, practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I expected practice today, but to be honest, they never sent out a media schedule. So they might have practice in an hour and a half and nobody knows about it, or they might practice come Wednesday. I see Spencer Anderson getting almost all of the reps as the starter, Mason getting just a little bit. It's kind of like, remember, was it last year? It had to be last year. The first time Kenny went down and Mike Tomlin was like, "Oh, there's going to be a competition between Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph to see who starts." And then Mitch Trubisky took 95% of the first team reps and Mason like warmed up with the first team like once. That's what I expect to happen between Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick. Mike Tomlin will come in on Tuesday. First Tomlin Tuesday tomorrow. That's a big deal. And by the end of the press conference, we'll say something along the lines of, "Yeah, Spencer's going to get the first shot, but this is going to be a competition. We're going to see who the best is. It's going to be Spencer's job." I expect Spencer to be the starter week 1, and I think that's the right move. You know, don't start 2 rookies and possibly a third come week 2 and Troy Fautanu. Let Spencer Anderson be that guy. He's worked as that guy all offseason. I think it makes the most sense right now. I'm not saying anything about the future, but right now, Spencer Anderson is my pick, and I expect the Steelers to think the same way.
yeah. It makes all the sense in the world to go with Anderson. I like McCormick, and I think the future's bright for him. But I just think that it's a little bit too much too soon to throw
Yep.
in, like you mentioned, potentially 3 rookies in week 1 or 3 rookies in week 2. I understand Anderson's only in year 2, and I understand he was a 7th-round pick. But again, we mentioned it last week. This is a guy that has gone through an NFL season, has gone through an NFL game week before, which you can't, deny that plays an impact and plays a factor as well. And this is also a guy that the Steelers have liked a lot since he came into the organization. There was no question he was making the 53-man roster last year as a 7th rounder. And this year he was given a bigger role. And I think this is the time to let him prove that all of that work is paying off and that you do have a viable option behind Siamalu going forward, as well as being able to grow and groom Mason McCormick to potentially be the future starter.
Yeah, and that's the thing is next year, if Isaac returns but James Daniels doesn't, maybe you start Mason McCormick in James Daniels' spot. But the year after that, you're going to need another guard. And if Spencer's good, you are now looking at Broderick Jones, Spencer Anderson, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, and Troy Fautanu as your offense. Like, that's how you build an offensive line. And everybody's going to say, well, Spencer was a 7th-round pick. Ramon Foster was here forever, and that dude was undrafted. So Alejandro Villanueva was the same way. Like, they know how to do this. If you have somebody on the offensive line, you let them rock. You don't care where they got drafted. If they're good, you keep them around. And Spencer Anderson would be as cheap as they come. So I think that's the right move for the Steelers. for right now and to kind of see what you have in the future, I wouldn't be worried about Mason McCormick, and this has nothing to do with Mason McCormick's development. If anything, it protects him moving forward. Next thing is obviously the signings, the additions, what's going on at corner, what's going on at wide receiver. It's a big week for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you take a weekend off, you kind of settle, and everybody's like, all right, this is what's happened. I don't think the Steelers are doing that. I think they're looking at this and saying, we're trying to find some corner help. We're trying to find some wide receiver help. I don't think they're going to get lucky with the wide receiver. I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe after week 1, week 2, a guy like Treylon Burks becomes available, and you could look at a name like that. But I think cornerback is the way to go right now. I think you could go out and find Patrick Peterson would be the guy, but I don't know if you've been paying attention to his Instagram stories. He's in like Cancun or something every weekend, hosting events, hanging out at Vegas. And do it up, my dude. Do it. Have a blast. But if you had asked me, Patrick Peterson is in pretty good retirement mode right now, and I would have a hard time believing he comes back to play in 2024. But Akello's out there. Obviously Xavier Howard's out there, but there's questions there. There's names out there. There are names out there that you could still go and sign. And I think the Steelers are bare minimum going to have some conversations this week to see what's good. Next week is when I believe they'll start working on the wide receiver, because they'll want to see what they have right now in this group, especially if Roman Wilson somehow gets to play in week 1. I think they give it a moment, see what they have, and then address it. Corner, I don't think they're going to wait. I think they're going to make a move before Sunday, just as like a last option reserve guy, not to surpass Corey Trice, maybe play a little bit in the slot, but I still think Corey could play in the slot too. But I do expect a cornerback to be added before game time.
Yeah, you need a little bit more support in that room. And that's not to say that Beanie shouldn't be the starter and Beanie Bishop in the slot, but you do need some support there in case, he's an undrafted rookie, in case the lights get a little bit too bright and you need to not give him 100% of the snaps right away. Now, that's not to say that he wouldn't need it. Potentially he goes out there and he's great. I'm not ruling that out, because I think that he has that capability. But I mean, it's not just him. It's also that third cornerback. I mean, Corey Trice has never stepped on the field in an NFL regular season game. You need a little bit more support in those rooms. And I understand DeMonte KZ might be able to drop down. But again, it's getting back into the first conversation we had. How many times do you really want to start switching people from their natural positions? And how much better off are you if you do that versus going out and getting somebody else who that is their natural position? Unfortunately, Dory Jackson came off the board. He was my option for the Steelers there, but there's still, like you mentioned, some other options out there for the Steelers to kind of supplant really the bottom of that room and to help out when it comes to reserves and backups and load management if need be on Sunday.
Yeah, it was crazy how quick Adoree went off the board after we talked about him on Friday. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me, man. There it is. Classic fashion, obviously. That's how we do things here. I agree with you. Like, it's one thing, and you're spot on. It's one thing to put somebody out there and say, hey, this is week 1. This is your first ever NFL game. Awesome. It's another thing to say, this is week 1. This is your first ever NFL game, and we're going to make you play slot corner, which you've never played before in your entire career. So have a great time doing that one. I think they're going to try to get somebody to fill that slot role, keep Beanie off the field, and kind of keep trucking forward. But that's my expectations. As for wide receiver, I think we get a whole week before any decisions moving forward are made there. All right, we're going to dive into everybody's questions as we do every single day. So if you have more of them, please toss them in the chat. First, we got a word from our boys over at Gametime. Let's talk about Gametime. I could still taste the popcorn and the soda and smell the beer of my first Pittsburgh Steelers game. And yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars might have won that day, but I will never forget how loud Heinz Field was and how rocking that stadium was on the North Shore. Gametime has this new feature called Gametime Picks that makes things like getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I have an upcoming concert in Cleveland the day after the Pittsburgh Steelers play against the Browns, and instead of sitting there clicking on every single section, I'm just going to use Gametime Picks. Let's talk about why it's so great. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. On top of that, you get all-in pricing, which means that you get the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. On top of that, you get seat views because nobody wants to buy some nosebleed seats for cheap and take a guess on whether you're staring at a pole or you just got the greatest deal in the entire venue. Plus, the lowest price guaranteed, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage means that your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code ALLSteelers for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ALLSTEELERS for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, low prices, guaranteed. Shout out our boys over at Gametime. So while we were gone, I don't know if you've seen, but while we were gone, the Pittsburgh Steelers did exactly what I said they were going to do, and that is to add a defensive back. Now, I don't know if it's on their practice squad or on their active roster, but they have signed, according to NFL insider Aaron Wilson, man, you guys know I'm terrible with names. Oyalola. We're going to rock with that one. Former Jacksonville Jaguars signed him to the International Pathway Program, which I would imagine means he's going to be on their practice squad at least to start and then possibly work his way into the active roster. But still a name, another safety, that's what the Steelers were looking for, is just somebody who can mix and match, play a little bit everywhere, defensive back who could play nickel, who could play slot, who could play safety. Again, I don't think he suits up for week one, but I do think that this is a move that the Pittsburgh Steelers are preparing to add to their active roster at some point, at least as a possibility. Again, I don't know anything about this guy. Do you have stats possibly of anything that he has done in the NFL?
Let me go to bring that one up. If you can talk a little bit more before I can get his stats, actually.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know what the International Pathway Program is, it's kind of like an extra roster spot / practice squad spot. You're allowed to sign someone from overseas through the Pathway Program. He does not take up a role, but can play almost like the emergency third quarterback on game days. That's essentially the same thing. The Steelers needed somebody like this, and if he's versatile, that's what they're looking for. Again, I don't know if it's the level that I'm looking for because I don't know anything about him, and Nick's face kind of makes me think that maybe he's not the right fit, but he's an addition. What do we got?
I mean, he hasn't stepped foot on the field, so no stats on either ESPN or Football Reference. So.
All right, shout out to our boy. Oh man, I'm gonna forget it again. Oyalola. Shout out, dude. Shout out. All right, let's answer some questions here. I know we got a couple. If you guys have more of them, please toss them in the chat. We'll answer all of them before we head out of here. What do we got?
Speaking of the Gametime ad that we just showed out, first question is, what show are you going to see soon, and what is the genre?
Oh, so we talking concerts? Because I'm going to Creed in Cleveland. 100%.
That's the one. Well, the one you referenced in the Gametime ad.
Oh, yeah. Oh, shout out to our boys over at Gametime. Yeah, Creed, dude, 100% in Cleveland. The second that I saw that, I texted all of my boys and said, yo, we going to Creed, bro? You guys coming to the Steelers game and we're going to Creed? So I will, I'll spend Thursday night working. I will spend Friday night, hand up the whole time. Can you take me higher? All day. So it'll be a great day. That's my show, 100%. Shout out Creed.
Let's go over to Vibing with the Dogs that asks, how many games do you guys think the Steelers fans will last until they start wanting a quarterback change?
One, potentially. There's a possibility of one. You lose the first time they lose. The first time the Steelers offense looks bad and they lose, that's when you're going to start hearing it. It's going to start getting loud. The first time, radio guys start pushing the narrative, it's going to start getting loud. I could see it happening in week one. I hope not. It's been 30 years since the Pittsburgh Steelers have lost to a first round or first year coaching staff. So I'm hoping that they pull off a win in week one. But the first loss, I think it's going to get loud. I think it's going to get loud.
Let's go over to Sajan Patel, who says, got a way too early take for next season. If the Steelers and Najee sadly part ways after this year, I think we can replace him with drafting Ollie Gordon out of OK State. Any thoughts on the OK
Yeah,
State running back?
that guy's a monster. I love it. I mean, Oklahoma State just produces running backs, but Gordon's a good one. I think there'll be a few options. That's my guess next year, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers will go draft to replace Najee Harris. They'll bring back Jaylen Warren. They'll obviously have Cordero Patterson, and then they will replace Najee with a like middle round draft pick, and most likely, you know, third, fourth round, somewhere in there, because they're not going to look for immediate boost. They have other options or other needs that they have to fill, but they're going to want a big time running back as well.
Yeah, there's one that I watched this weekend, Nick Singleton. He's a junior, but if he comes out, kid is electric. So
yeah, very true.
Let's go over to Luke Nessie, who says, is trading Najee our only option left at getting a decent wide receiver? What options do we have for offensive line help, and do we need cornerback help now that Ryan Watts is out for the season?
So we'll start with the Ryan Watts one. Ryan Watts was going to play safety. Wasn't going to have an impact. Like, I don't think he was going to see the field almost at all on defense this season. You do need some corner slot help, I believe, because Beanie Bishop isn't the answer in my eyes, but it's, there are options. Najee being traded is not going to happen. I don't believe so. I don't think the Steelers have any intentions of trading Najee Harris. I don't think that's the only way to get a decent wide receiver either. I think that draft picks are the way to go. Like, you could look at teams around the league that'll want a running back, and maybe some of them will toss Najee's name out there, but I don't think the Steelers are going to give up somebody to get somebody when they're hunting for a Super Bowl, not somebody of Najee's caliber. So it just doesn't make sense there. I think they'll go out and do it with draft picks, and they'll probably try to get somebody that's somewhat cheap so that they could do it with not such significant draft picks. And when it comes to offensive line help, there are a lot of big name tackles out there. You could go get Donovan Smith, David Bakhtiari. Charles Leon is still out there. That there are still names for sure. When it comes to guard, center, the Steelers added a guy in John LeGlue to their practice squad. I was very pumped about that one. I think that's an option. That's kind of what you're looking for, is those lower end guys that could come in and be a depth piece. Ryan McCollum's still on their roster, so I would imagine he's an option as well.
You mentioned John LeGlue. Let's go to Dalton's question, which is about LeGlue. He says, do you think that LeGlue will be signed to the active roster anytime soon?
Probably not. They might bring him up, for game one. They might activate him to the inactive roster, but I don't think they'll sign him to the active roster anytime soon. They'll try to wait out those 3 games before they make a move. It's not like teams are going to come in hunting for John LeGlue. So no, they're going to want to see what they want or what they have in him, how good he's been since he's left, and they'll take it slow. But if Troy comes back, if Isaac comes back in 4 weeks, you might be able to scrape by and not have to sign him to the active roster.
We got a lot of people asking about Jaylen Warren's injury status and wanting to know if his hamstring is under control going into this week.
Yeah. He said he's ready to go week 1. He feels very confident in the hamstring, feels good about it. I didn't really have a bunch of worries about Jaylen once I saw him put a jersey on. I was like, all right, dude, Jaylen's a muscle hamster. He's going to be just fine. So I think Jaylen will play week 1.
Speaking of Jaylen Warren, somebody wants to know, Nelson, is he a Pro Bowler this year in your eyes?
I hope so. I think that's a possibility. Jaylen looks like a stud every time he steps on the field. It's just about opportunity. Like, I was doing my fantasy football draft yesterday, and I was sitting there staring at Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, just going, who do I pick? Who's the guy? Who's the one do you go with? Because Najee is going to have 1,000 yards, and he's going to have 5+ touchdowns. Is there enough left for Jaylen to also have 1,000 yards and 5+ touchdowns? I think the possibility is there. How much does Cordero Patterson get involved? You just don't know yet. So if I had to guess, no, but not in a bad way, just in a how much do you got going on right now way. How many reps can you possibly hand out and divvy up type of way? So it's more of a compliment to the backfield than it is not having faith in Jaylen.
Casey Benson wants to know, is Roman Wilson ruled out for week 1 yet?
No. And I think there's a possibility he plays, because he started doing some stuff on the sideline last week. We'll see what happens this week. And if he could work his way into some role. I don't expect him to have a big role in week 1. He didn't take any preseason reps, so you're going to have to kind of work him in there a little bit, but I could see him getting on the offense just a little bit and having some reps, but we'll find out Wednesday. Wednesday will be the big day of whether or not we feel Roman is going to play.
Nelson Martinez wants to know, if you had to predict right now, will the Steelers win a playoff game this year for the first time in 8 years?
Yes. My simple answer is yes. And obviously there's a lot that plays into that. I mean, that answer could change if somehow you face the Kansas City Chiefs in the first round of the playoffs, but I believe that if everything worked in their favor and they played any other team besides the Kansas City Chiefs in the first round of the playoffs, I'd feel pretty confident that the Steelers have a shot. I mean, they almost had a shot last year against Buffalo with Mason Rudolph. So I have a lot more faith in Russell Wilson than Mason Rudolph. So I feel good about it. I look at the playoff situation and say it's a wait and see situation. But if I had to take a guess, I wouldn't say it's too bold of a prediction to say that they win a playoff game.
Let's go to Noel's question, who says, Russ will have a solid year, but how many years do they extend Justin Fields, and how much money total and guaranteed? What point in time do you think they lock him up, if at all?
I think it's next off season. They lock him up. He's probably going to test the market and see what happens. Again, everything could change. If Russell Wilson isn't the starting quarterback by the end of the season and Justin Fields is your guy and he balls out, you don't know what's going to happen. Everything could change. But from right now where I stand, if Russ starts all season long and Justin is the backup all season long, he's going to go into next year, hit free agency, see what his market is, and then the Steelers will have an opportunity. I would say $10 to $12 million a year is the absolute max. If I had to guess, it's like $5 or $6 million a year to start, with like a $25 million second year option to kind of boost it up so that they have 2 years of reliable money before they'd have to hand him a massive contract. Almost nothing guaranteed.
Let's go over to Dalton's question next. He says, why did they pick up Boston Scott over LaMichael Pirine and Daijun Edwards?
The Daijun Edwards thing, I didn't think Daijun Edwards had like a season that you were like, you have to keep him. So I was kind of okay with that one. LaMichael Pirine surprised me. If you were going to go with anybody, I thought LaMichael Pirine would have been the guy next to Jonathan Ward. But you're bringing back Jonathan Ward. I thought he was a good option. And then Boston Scott, man, he's reliable. Boston Scott is a reliable running back who's got experience and good experience in the NFL. So I think that's outside of Ben Skowronek. Not going to be able to, thank you, out of LA. Boston Scott is my favorite practice squad signing that the Pittsburgh Steelers made. I just think he's got reliable legs and is able to catch the football, and he's just done this. So you take guys who've done this, who could help your team in the long run if you need them. That's what the Boston Scott signing is.
Let's go to Ashish, who says, Noah, I heard you say you think Trice can play inside. Has he gotten any reps there this summer?
Yeah, I don't know if I think he could play inside, but I don't know if he's going to be good or if he's going to have some transition periods or whatever, because he never played there. He has never played on the inside in an actual game. So we'll see what happens. But the Steelers have put him in there during the summer, or quite a bit, actually. They've played him at the slot and at the dime linebacker, or the dime backer position, excuse me. So I expect him to play some of that this season and early this season, just to see what they have in him. It's a wait and see situation, though, because he's never done it during a game.
Anzwar the Great says, was Russ a walking sack last year, and will that be a problem for the Steelers this season?
No, I think the Russell Wilson criticism comes from every angle and every different direction, and you never know what to trust and what not to trust. He does get sacked a lot, and you don't know if that's going to be an issue in Pittsburgh. Sorry, guys. There's a dog barking and a lady yelling, and I can't understand if this is a scary situation or if somebody's just yelling at a dog. But I don't look at Russ as a concern until he has to be a concern. His time in Denver was not good, but there are a lot of quarterbacks who have bad situations in places, who go other places, and they do fine. And Russ is a guy who's done fine in the NFL for a long time. So I think you have to balance out okay, last year was tough. Denver was a tough situation, but overall his career's been pretty good. Where do we find that middle ground? And I think the middle ground is wait and see what happens.
Brimstone wants to know, what are the chances that Arthur Smith's scheme can make wide receivers seem better than they are?
I think a ton. If we're just going to compare it to the past 3 years, massively. It is the chances are 101% actually. Arthur Smith draws guys open. Is the best example of that came in the preseason, the first preseason game. He had two wide receivers running routes. Both of them ran to the same side of the field, and still somehow somebody was open. That should not happen. Arthur Smith made it happen. I think he's very good at drawing guys open. He has a lot of success with wide receivers in the NFL as an offensive coordinator. So I expect that to continue, especially compared to years past where nobody was open ever, and it was always the same routes. So this is a huge upgrade.
Speaking of wide receivers, Answar the Great wants to know, which one of the wide receivers already on the roster would you pick to become a number 2 or better?
Roman Wilson would be my top choice. Van Jefferson is my second choice, and Calvin Austin's my third. I think Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin's a close race. I've liked what I've seen from Van Jefferson this summer, and he's done some things to change his game that I feel pretty confident in, and I'm excited to see. Calvin Austin looked very good all summer long as well. When you're that small and you're stuck on the inside, I think it's tougher to become a number 2. Roman Wilson, obviously, is a third-round rookie, so he's got the most upside, and the upside's definitely there.
Let's go over to Vibin with the Dogs, who says, is there a chance the Steelers end up benching Broderick Jones once Troy Fautanu comes back? I've been seeing that float around recently.
Yeah, I've seen it float around too. Broderick would have to be really bad, like really bad. And I think if I'm the Steelers, and it's tough because Dan Moore played very well this summer and in the preseason. So maybe you don't take Dan Moore out. I know everybody wants to take Dan Moore out, but sometimes you just got to think logically and give yourself the best situation. And right now, Dan Moore is your best offensive tackle. So you don't take him off the field. But in my opinion, you would try Broderick at left tackle before you immediately benched him. See if it works out. See if anything changes. Don't give too much room for hiccups and go from there. It's not ideal by no means, but it's where I see them going. I don't think that they would bench Broderick for Troy outright. I think it would be a transition period, and then you go from there. And Broderick would have to be playing really bad.
Let's go to Jimmy, who wants to know, will the Steelers get another top receiver in the first 4 weeks of the season? Are they still big game hunting?
Yeah, I think so. They're waiting for guys to become available, and it would be more closer to the week 4 situation than it is week 1. So, the Raiders start out really bad. Devontae Adams could become available. The Titans start out really bad. Treylon Burks, DeAndre Hopkins could become available. I don't know. You got to find teams with excess, and then you go to those teams and see what happens. I mean, the Denver Broncos start out really bad. Cortland Sutton possibly becomes available. They're just names, and we have to wait. But teams aren't going to. Every team goes into the season thinking we are going to be good, and until they are proven that they are not going to be good, they will hold on to their guys. Once they're proven that they're going to be bad, the Steelers could go hunting.
Nelson Martinez wants to know, who is the most underrated player on the Steelers roster right now?
That is a great question. Deshaun Elliott tops that list easy, hands down. That dude's a monster. Alex Highsmith's probably on there too. That dude's also a monster. Landon Roberts is probably on there. Deshaun Elliott's the answer. Deshaun Elliott is that guy looks so good, and he is so good, and he's going to be a huge part of this defense. But I think it's a very tight race between him, Dante Jackson, Landon Roberts, Alex Highsmith. And then I don't know, maybe guys like Isaac Seumalo, and even as crazy as it sounds, maybe even guys like Pat Freiermuth.
Yep, that was the last name that I had in my head, and I was like, I wonder if he's going to say it last. But there it is.
Yeah,
let's finish it off. Let's finish it off with Cecil's question. Wants to know, do you think Roman Wilson has the potential to be a scrappy Julian Edelman type receiver?
Yeah, I think he's got. To be honest, I think he's got potential to be better than Julian Edelman. He's faster. He's crisper on his routes. He's not as raw coming into the league as Julian Edelman was. there's a huge work ethic there that you have to add into that, but we'll see if he's got that. That we can't tell right now. I'm excited for what I think Roman's got a bunch of potential. He's a hard-nosed, physical, reliable wide receiver, and that's what the Steelers are looking for. That's what they've needed. So I have a lot of very high expectations for Roman Wilson, but again, we'll wait and see. But Julian Edelman type receiver, yeah, I think he's got that type of upside to have that type of impact for sure.
Let's close it out with this one, actually, because I like this coming in from Lifted Ones. Is this another outgained offensively by our opponents, but still winning games type of season? Do you think that's the game script for the Steelers in 2024?
I don't. You have a better offensive coordinator. You have a better quarterback. You have a really good running system. I don't. I think you're going to have your struggles, obviously, and a lot of teams have struggles, and you're going to deal with injuries. And right now, the Steelers are dealing with offensive line injuries. But I by no means look at this situation and say the Steelers are going to struggle offensively this season, and it's going to be really bad. I think at bare minimum, they're going to do enough. And last year, enough was score 12 points, and sometimes you'll win games. I think this year doing enough is 20 points, 24 points. I think that's where the Steelers are going to be. So I don't look at this and say this is going to be the same as last year. I think it'll be better some way or another. Arthur Smith will be able to drop stuff to get guys involved and get guys going, even when there are struggles. Adjustments will be made. So my answer to that would be no.
That's a wrap for today, then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. With that said, we will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.